There are some songs that just perfectly capture a moment in time. For a lot of us, one of those songs absolutely defined the summer of 1993. It was so sunny, so optimistic, and it came with a video you just couldn't forget. But the story behind Blind Melon's No Rain? Well, it's anything but sunny. It's a story of a truly meteoric rise and a devastating tragedy. Okay, if you were around in the summer of 93, this picture probably brings it all back in a flash. This is Blind Melon, right at the peak of their fame. And it was all thanks to their massive hit No Rain, and of course that iconic music video with the bee girl. For a minute there, they were literally everywhere. I mean, that upbeat, kind of neo-psychedelic sound made them absolute stars. But behind what felt like the feel-good anthem of the decade was the story of incredible talent, just struggling against immense pressure and some really serious personal demons. So let's peel back the layers and see how it all unfolded. To really get the full picture, to understand the tragedy, you first have to understand the incredible rise. So let's go right back to the beginning. So the band actually came together in Los Angeles back in March of 1990. And it's one of those classic stories, musicians moving to the big city to try and make it. You had guitarist Roger Stevens and bassist Brad Smith coming all the way from Mississippi, and they linked up with this singer, Shannon Hoon, who was a transplant from Indiana. And what about that name, Blind Melon? Where did that come from? Well, it wasn't just random. It actually came from two places. First, it was a phrase that bassist Brad Smith's dad used to describe the local hippies. And second, it was a little nod to a character from a Cheech and Chong sketch. Honestly, it kind of perfectly captured their laid-back, slightly quirky vibe. Okay, and here is a huge piece of the puzzle early on. Shannon Hoon happened to be friends with Axl Rose. We're talking about the frontman of Guns N' Roses, one of the biggest bands on the planet at the time. And this wasn't just a casual thing. Hoon actually sang backup vocals on a bunch of tracks for their legendary Use Your Illusion albums. That connection gave Blind Melon a massive shot of industry attention right from the start. So that early buzz, it turned into a full-blown explosion fast. This next chapter is all about their absolutely incredible, just meteoric rise right to the top of the charts. And this is how it all happened. Their debut album was doing all right, but then the video for No Rain hit MTV. And the story of this lonely, tap-dancing bee girl just connected with millions of people. The video was so quirky, so relatable, and it became absolutely inescapable. It turned the song into a true global phenomenon. And the result of all that? Their self-titled debut album sold over 4 million copies. That's just in the United States alone. We're talking quadruple platinum. They went from being this new band trying to make it to one of the biggest rock acts in the world, and it felt like it happened overnight. Their success wasn't just about record sales either. I mean, look who they were sharing stages with. They were out there touring with legends like Neil Young and Lenny Kravitz. They played the iconic Woodstock '94 festival, and they even opened for the Rolling Stones. This was the absolute peak of rock and roll success. But, as is so often the case in these stories, while the band's public profile was just soaring, their private lives were becoming more and more chaotic. This is where the story starts to take a really dark turn. And this contrast, this really defined their entire story. On one hand, you have this massive, unbelievable success. Platinum albums, playing Woodstock, touring with the Stones. But on the other hand, a much darker reality was taking hold, especially for Shannon Hoon. He was struggling and struggling hard with severe drug and alcohol abuse, arrests, and repeated trips to rehab. So, in an effort to kind of escape some of that chaos and maybe find a new creative spark, the whole band moved to New Orleans to work on their second album. And that album, called Soup, would end up being so much darker and way more experimental. Its lyrics were raw and introspective, really reflecting all the turmoil and disillusionment they were feeling. That move to New Orleans was supposed to be a fresh start, but tragically, it would become the final chapter for the band's original lineup. Before we talk about what happened, I think it's really important to remember the kind of frontman Shannon Hoon was. Gia DeSantis from their record label put it perfectly. Shannon had a magnetism. You couldn't take your eyes off him. He was the captivating, raw, public face of the band, and that's what made the loss so incredibly profound. So, against the advice of his drug counselor, the band went out on tour to support the Soup album. Then, on October 21st, 1995, while they were in New Orleans, Shannon Hoon was found dead on the tour bus. The cause was a cocaine overdose. He was only 28 years old. The band was just shattered. The next year, in 1996, the surviving members put together this tribute album of outtakes and demos. They called it Nico, and it was named for Shannon's daughter, who was just 13 weeks old when he passed away. All the profits went to programs that help musicians who are struggling with addiction. The remaining members really tried to carry on. They spent 4 long years looking for a new singer. But how do you replace a voice and a presence like that? The truth is, you can't. Nobody could fill Shannon's shoes. So on March 4th, 1999, they officially broke up. And for a long time, it really seemed like that was the end of the story. But it wasn't the end. Not really. After years of silence, the story of Blind Melon was about to take a very unexpected turn. So during this big hiatus, something funny happened. The band's legacy just kept growing. Compilation albums were selling really well, which proved that people had not forgotten about them. And then, in 2006, 7 years after they broke up, the surviving members shocked everyone by announcing they were getting back together with a new vocalist. So on the left, you've got the band in their prime, back in '93, and then on the right, there's the reformed lineup with their new singer, Travis Warren. They actually released a new album in 2008 and started touring again, bringing that music back to the fans who had waited for so long. And then you get this incredibly powerful full circle moment that just gives you goosebumps. In 2015, Shannon Hoon's daughter, Nico Blue, the very same namesake of that tribute album, joined the band on stage to sing their song Change. It was just this beautiful tribute, connecting the band's past directly with its future. Now, the band has had its starts and stops since getting back together, but they are still out there. They're still a band. The story didn't just end on that tragic day in 1995. It evolved. It showed a kind of resilience that I don't think anyone could have predicted. And really, that leaves us with the biggest question of Blind Melon's whole story. For them, it seems the answer wasn't about trying to replace a legend, because you can't. It was about honoring his legacy while finding a new way to keep the music and the spirit of the band alive.